well that's happening with that, the lack of rainfall. As I mentioned to you before, the amount of Doppler radar stations around the Earth and the concept that these things are controlling the weather and pushing the clouds away. If you have a look at this radar image, very predictable, folks. We see rain out to sea here, quite heavy patches of rain, but it all stops in a nice round circle around the Doppler radar. That's the way it goes, folks. They're controlling the weather. As I said, this is reaching New Zealand as well. This is what the glaciers are looking like in New Zealand because of the smoke plume coming from Australia. It's doing a lot of damage already to other countries, and you know, it's our fires here, and it's just devastating, folks. There's plenty of pictures to show you the extent of the devastation. You just got to look on Google Images. They're all over the place. It's really like nothing we've ever seen before. So big that we're told it's even generating its own weather systems, if such a thing is even possible. Pyrocumulonimbus clouds, we're told, are being formed. I can understand pyro clouds being formed. How they could produce rain, to me, seems a little avant-garde, but hey, that's what we're being told. You can believe it if you want to, folks, but that just shows the extent of the situation here in Australia. And as I said, the smoke plume that's leaving is absolutely outrageous. The smoke plume is actually wider than Europe, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll just show you this video here so you can check it out for yourself. As you can see there, that is the size of the smoke plume. There it is in comparison to the size of Europe. There it is in comparison to the size of the United States. There it is in comparison to the size of South America. This is a pretty large smoke plume, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the reason this is happening, you know, I showed you on a video last week or a couple of weeks ago. I've done a couple of videos in the last week. I'll just run through this here so you can see it. I showed you on that video the floodplain harvesting that is going on. Sorry about this. This is just what I deal with here with buffering, ladies and gentlemen. I can set the videos up to play, but I still get this buffering problem. The floodplain harvesting that's happening and the private dams that have been built, this is one of the main problems that we've got here. This is why the country is so dry. I mean, if you look at some of the news reports that I just went through, and I'll put the links to those reports below so you can look at them for yourself. They talk about the water shortage and the crisis, how there's this major water crisis in Australia. And really, it's because of this. It's because of the floodplain harvesting, and it's because of the private dams that have been built. These dams that I talked about on the last couple of reports that I've done. Again, you'll find the links below. Now, all of this sort of stuff is what has contributed to this situation, folks. And if you want to know how they've gotten away with doing this and how they've gotten away with selling off our water, I just want to show you this report here that was put out by our friends on the channel, Liability Mate. They really do good work, folks. And if you haven't subscribed to that channel yet, I highly recommend that you do if you're an Australian, because they are keeping us informed about what's going on the ground here. But have a listen to this report coming from Liability Mate, and it's referring to an interview that was conducted by Alan Jones. Have a listen to this. This is how they've managed to sell our water, folks, and tell me what you think about this. This is Australian politicians for you.
That you asked the Premier of New South Wales in Parliament this week, last week, Gladys Berejiklian, whether parliamentarians shouldn't have to disclose their water ownership. And you asked, basically, the Premier, given the New South Wales water crisis, your words, and current investigations into water trading and water corruption, will the Premier explain why state members of Parliament don't have to declare their water ownership before...
Water ownership. Members of Parliament don't have to declare their water ownership. How are members of Parliament even in a position where they are owning water? Think about that, folks. But I'll continue.
Before you ask that question, coming to Peter, Likewise, there are federal parliamentarians, I'm told, who own water.
And it wouldn't be specific on their disclosures that they would have to own up to all water right. I have to say, I have concerns that some recently departed federal MPs, and probably some still in the parliament, own water.
And that's your concern, Helen?
Absolutely.
Because you're up front, you say I own water.
That's right, I did. And when I saw the form to fill in, when I joined Parliament, I just thought, there was no obligation to actually disclose my water interests at all.
And the Premier didn't answer your question?
No, she said that, well, basically she said that we should trust politicians.
Yes, you said the water market, you've said, is an unregulated disgrace. We know there are people who have an interest in keeping water scarce and prices high. They're making millions off the misery of drought-stricken farmers.
Absolutely.
I don't know, and Peter doesn't know, which of these politicians own water. Then you've got these private water holders, this Duxton Water, who own enough water to fill a Warrenora Dam.
That's right.
They don't own a tablecloth of land.
That's right. And, of course, all the foreign interests too. So we know a lot of that water is, a lot of land and water is owned by foreign entities, corporations, and that's a big concern.
You also raise this question of the manufacture of Bellamy's, being the sale of it being approved to a Chinese company. And you said this is a long sequence of events, the sale of important Australian assets to overseas investors. And you gave a speech on how government is, quote, making decisions about foreign purchases in secrecy. And you said the coalition in the last 30 years have successfully portrayed themselves as strong at protecting our borders, strong at putting Australian interests ahead of those of foreigners. But then you said this, but protecting our borders should be about more than just stopping sick refugee children from presenting at Australian hospitals. It means protecting Australian land, Australian jobs, Australian water, Australian farms, Australian heritage, and the Australian way of life.
Absolutely.
On that score, the coalition's failed.
Absolutely. So
how many people in the Parliament and the Chamber when you made the speech?
Probably about 3 or 4.
And no reaction?
No, well, I think that, you know...
But in the electorate, what's the reaction?
A lot. Absolutely. So we put it up on the Facebook and people are tuning in on it, and it's been shared, I don't know how many times, but it's certainly resonating within the community and also outside of the electorate of Murray too. I get a lot of people coming in and commenting about what's happening. People are fed up, absolutely, and we're in a lot of trouble.
Talking about...
We're in a lot of trouble. As she said, we are in a lot of trouble.